You see me? All right. Well, it says I'm live. It's counting down. Unfortunately, you get my crappy camera that's on my computer because I don't know how to do all this yet. So anyway, hi, everyone. Please excuse my hair. I just dyed it. It'll fluff up probably as we go. Oh yeah, using the camera like a mirror. All right. Thank you. Good. I know you can hear me too. All right. Let's see. I guess I should do. How do I record this? Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I will do my damnedest to save this, and if it doesn't work, I'll just record it a second time. It's already been spoiled for me, so you can thank Jeb for that. Not Jeb, Ken for that. Though I guess you can kind of thank Jeb too. So I found out what this episode was supposed to be about because I saw the title for it, and it's actually out of order if you go to the Travel Channel website. This is actually the 5th episode that was pitched in the series, but this is the 4th episode that they've aired. So I don't know why they decided to shoot them out of order. I just know that the first episode will be after this one. And it's like Phoenicians in America, which, you know, can't wait for that. I'm interested to see. I know this is about Jack the Ripper because it's the Ripper Unmasked. And what I really am interested to see is how they're going to use geology, because Scott does try to like work that into his stuff every now and then. And this is just a weird camera angle. You can't see me emote. There we go. So I'm interested to see how they're going to work geology into the unmasking of the Jack the Ripper. And also, I just want to know why Jack the Ripper, like, Aliens, I thought was jumping the shark. And I still think the Aliens episode really is jumping the shark. But why Jack the Ripper? Like, so, yeah. So this should be interesting to see. I'm probably only going to record about an hour of this just because it does take me a long time to get through these. And it takes me longer when I stand here and ramble. You won't be able to watch the video alongside me because I'm still not sure what the copyright is with that. But I have the volume turned up as loud as I can get it. So you should be able to hear it at least. I don't know. I think there's a way I can share the screen. If something really interesting pops up, I'll see if I can't flip it. Bear with me. This is the first time I've ever done this, so it's probably going to be really buggy. Anyway, so without further ado, let's start Jack the Ripper. By the way, this episode contains graphic depictions of violence. Oh, you can't hear anything. Where's my sound? Come on. Why are you muted? Hang on. All right. Hang on. Hang on. Things ain't working. We should not be surprised by this. Why is this muted? Why are you quiet? You shouldn't be quiet. Do I not have any sound at all? Oh no. Well, that's embarrassing. See what we can do here. That's not gonna work. Apparently I don't have sound on this for some reason. Oh, you know what? I might have it in the wrong player. Told you I didn't know what I was doing. Open with VLC. Do I have sound now? There we go. I just had it in the wrong player. Yay! Emergency averted. Yes, I have 2 cats. Well, 3, but we only have 2 on record. All right, so we're in London in 1880. And we see women dressed up like, I guess, what they think prostitutes looked like back in the 1880s. I wonder if that's Scott dressed up as Jack the Ripper. Unfortunately, no, I don't have the power to destroy the internet. Uh-oh, I saw her ankles. That means she's a prostitute. I still have yet to figure out why every one of these episodes has to open with a short horror film. Like, I have not figured out why that's America Unearthed thing. Also, I would like to point out that just overall, see, this is where my little feminist flags come out. Overall, this show is incredibly violent towards women in general. But I skipped the intro because I hate the intro. Okay. We're in England. We're looking at an old reproduction
Any
of
good detective will tell you to unmask a serial killer, you have to put yourself in his shoes. Cut the throat. And the killer I'm trying to identify is Jack the Ripper. He's a fiend who I'm fascinated with. Now, the main cut up the middle of the body.
We get to watch.
Why? In recent months, as headlines show, there have been a bunch of new suspects. But I think one...
Oh, shit, that stopped it. So, yeah, we got to watch Scott playing around with a fake body where he's... I don't understand, Walter. I really don't. Let me see if I can...
Elizabeth. But to a new suspect who just might be one of the most famous Freemasons of all.
Ah, it is a Freemason thing.
All this started 3 weeks ago when I met a father and son who practiced medicine on Long Island, who showed me evidence based on medical research.
Can you guys hear it? Well, it's always the Freemasons, you know.
Well, Dan, Gene, thank you for taking some time here. You know, I've done a little research on Jack the Ripper. They called them the Whitechapel murders because they happened in that district of London.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
In the late summer and early fall of 1888, London was thrown into utter chaos by a series of 4 murders taking place against women of a certain class.
You said 4 murders. What I've read is that there were 5 murders.
I believe that the murder number 5 was just a copycat killing.
Jack the Ripper terrorized the streets of working-class London, killing part-time prostitutes.
No.
During 4 frightening months, at least 4 such women fell victim to the killer's blade. Mary Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, and Catherine Eddowes. But the murderer didn't just kill them. He mutilated and even eviscerated them. Quickly, some say, with the skill
Cheryl,
of
you're
surgeon,
pointing out the obvious.
There's been over 100 suspects that have been named. But you guys seem to think you've got it figured out.
Yes, we think we do.
Who is it?
The Ripper is Arthur Conan Doyle.
Arthur Conan Doyle. Born in Scotland in 1859,
wow.
Arthur Conan Doyle is famous for creating the enduring character of Sherlock Holmes, the detective. But before he became an author, Doyle was actually a doctor, something many people don't know. You think he's Jack the Ripper?
100%.
Why?
I went to pick up a scientific journal off the shelf when I was studying for my medical boards.
Right.
It happened to have an article that detailed his thesis paper from 1885, and that paper was on syphilis. I think Doyle's father had syphilis. And where do you get syphilis from? You get it from prostitutes.
So your thesis is that because his father had syphilis, probably got it from a prostitute, he harbored some bad feelings towards prostitutes. Arthur Conan Doyle's father suffered a severe illness.
So our premises is, just in case you can't tell, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is Jack the Ripper, and the reason he became Jack the Ripper and started killing prostitutes was because his dad got syphilis. Probably, maybe, we don't know. That's just a guess. And if his father had syphilis, he probably maybe got it from a prostitute, because apparently prostitutes are the only way you can get syphilis. Period. End of discussion. There is no other way in the world that you can get syphilis. Onward.
In his later life, spending 12 years in a mental asylum. But the Friedmans think he was misdiagnosed, as his neurological problems and other ailments suggested a chronic syphilis infection, a sexually transmitted disease he could have caught from a prostitute. The Ripper victims were allegedly prostitutes, but how strong is
allegedly
this as a motive?
Doyle may have thought that he was going to get syphilis or that he already had it.
Why would Doyle think
He
that?
was taking a medication that was only used to treat syphilis on himself in double the dose.
Heredity at that time was thought to be Lamarckian, which means your father could give it to you.
So with Arthur Conan Doyle, you've got a motive, syphilis, right? What other evidence do you have to pin it on him?
He was a natural-born killer.
He would get involved in street fights. He stabbed his prep school roommate on the first day. He beat his mother's lodger to within an inch of his life, which required a 23-day recovery period. This is a
I really should have looked at the background of my
drawn
video
by
before I
Doyle
started shooting this.
once
Oh, well.
he
You can see my
graduated
vacuum
from
cleaner.
medical school. The caption says it all.
Now this is a self-portrait.
Yes,
License to Kill?
license to kill, which is a totally inappropriate comment to make unless you truly meant it.
I don't have words, I'm sorry.
Arthur Conan Doyle, what
None of this is archaeology, so really I'm just kind of reacting to it as just a person watching it. So we're really doing this.
was a skilled surgeon. He could cut open a body and find a uterus and take it out without damaging any of the other organs around it.
I feel like
It's
this
still that
episode
the
is just
Ripper
violence on
happened to
women,
have two.
the episode.
Doyle was 28
Also, we're
or
going to
29
smear
years
Conan
old.
Doyle because
The
he can't defend
description
himself.
of the Ripper were a man of about 28 to 30 years of age. Doyle always wore a red muffler and a navy peacoat. That would
Lots of people wore red mufflers and navy pea coats in the 1880s. It was kind of what they call a trend.
was the only valid description given of the Ripper at the time of the crime.
Okay.
He had the physical attributes to do it, and he had the motive to do it.
So because Conan Doyle fits the incredibly vague description that we have of Jack the Ripper, in that he was male, the right age, alive at the right time, wore a coat, and had a red muffler, therefore Conan Doyle must be the Ripper. This is the evidence we're going on. Also, he drew a picture of himself graduating with the caption "License to Kill," and this guy thinks it's incredibly inappropriate.
Arthur Conan Doyle, one thing I can definitely tell you about him is that he was a Freemason, and I'm a Freemason.
Well, that's exactly why we asked to talk to you.
The Freemasons are a fraternal society
I mean, my grandfathers were both Freemasons too. Does that mean they're also in on the Jack the Ripper thing? I wonder if they knew Conan Doyle. Should have asked.
organized into groups called lodges across the world.
Hey, it's our lodge.
Steeped in mystery because of tightly held rituals, Freemasonry originated in 17th century England before being brought to America, where early members included George Washington and Benjamin Franklin.
Though it would
Arthur
probably
Conan Doyle
make this
did
a
join
little
the
bit
Masons
more
in
endurable.
1887, and he rose up the ranks pretty quickly. We saw the parallels between a Masonic ritual and what Jack the Ripper was able to commit on the streets.
Oh, all right. So he's recreating the Masonic rituals while killing supposed part-time
The way
prostitutes.
I saw those Ripper murders, they were almost identical.
Almost. I personally, though, mind you, I'm using my girl brain, which I'm not allowed to. That is what prevents me from being a Mason, because I do not carry the coveted Y chromosome. I was unaware that the Masons, you know, a group founded on architecture, that architecture and stonemasonry, that they practiced dissection as a Masonic rite that then could be reenacted by Jack the Ripper in the Victorian era. I'm just saying, this is news to me. This is news. Girl brain, though. Now we're back in Long Island.
As a Mason myself, I can tell you that mercy, not murder, is at the center of everything we believe. But could Freemason Arthur Conan Doyle really be a merciless serial killer? Do you think there's some type of a connection between the Ripper murders and Freemasonry?
That is correct. That's our take on that.
Okay.
When he became a third-degree Mason, I think Doyle just happened to be reading the material that he was given.
Masonic initiates like Conan Doyle would have been introduced to secret rituals as they advanced through the degrees of the order. Some of the victims' wounds that Dan described were consistent with ancient symbolic penalties familiar to Freemasons for those who violated their vows. Others were symbols used by esoteric members of the order, like the V's carved into Catherine Eddowes' face.
It couldn't possibly have been
Freemasonry certainly doesn't condone murder. I mean, not even in the least. But that's not to say that somebody couldn't go rogue.
Well, that's exactly what I think happened there. A great line that Doyle uses in one of his stories, The Speckled Band, is, when a doctor goes wrong, he's the first of criminals. He has nerve and he has knowledge. Well, Doyle is a doctor who has gone wrong.
There you go.
And who had all this knowledge of the Freemasons up in his head.
In addition to Doyle, there have been other Freemasons accused of being Jack the Ripper. In the 1970s, a sensational claim suggested William Galt, a Freemason.
I mean, okay, if you didn't know, and this is not me being sarcastic, Freemasonry is kind of a thing. It always has been. Like, if you're in the upper echelons of older time periods in society, it was kind of, you just were a Freemason. Like, it was just expected that you would be part of that group. It was just a way to, like, network, rub elbows, feel special, that kind of shit. People still do it today. It's not that big of a deal. There are a lot of Freemasons. It's like when everybody's like, oh, all of the founding fathers were Freemasons. It's like, yeah, all of the founding fathers were Freemasons. Like, of course they were. They were all, duh. So this, like, this thing of like, oh, this guy who's like kind of wealthy in the Victorian era is a Freemason. Yeah, I would be kind of surprised if he wasn't, actually. So anyway, this whole thing, like this Masonic conspiracy thing, it's like, it's just ridiculous because most men of that age and that economic class were probably Masons. The chances of them not being Masons are actually pretty slim. Were they all third-degree Masons? I don't know. Girl brain. But at the same time, like, this is not shocking. This is not news. Anyway.
Mason insurgent to Queen Victoria.
I guess what I'm saying is, of course, most of the candidates for the Ripper, for being Jack the Ripper, were Masons, because like most of the people who are accused of being Jack the Ripper are of the upper echelons, because it's pretty much probably the only way this guy could have gotten away with the murders, assuming he did, and he didn't just get stabbed to death in an alley somewhere and nobody knows about it. Whatever.
Was Jack the Ripper, and he murdered the victims to cover up a royal prince's scandalous affair.
And he's literally quoting From Hell. If you've never read the comic, you should read From Hell. This is literally the story out of that comic. The movie's shit. Go read the comic.
A more recent book said that a Michael Mabry, a Freemason and famed singer, killed the Ripper victims. Today, both theories have often been debunked or criticized, but the potential Freemasonic ties to the murders can't be ignored.
To tie it into the Freemasons,
I didn't even know the Doyle knew the
suspect
prince
was named Leather Apron.
Obviously, Freemasons, we wear leather aprons.
There's been
Who
a lot
else
of
would wear a leather
speculation that it could have
apron?
been a Freemason clue there.
This could be a clue. Leather aprons are ritual garments worn by Freemasons, which often show their rank in the order.
They're also worn by
London
butchers,
newspapers ran
people who work
articles
on
describing the
things.
Whitechapel murderer as Leather Apron at the time of the killings. Of the Ripper, one witness said the distinguishing feature of his costume is a leather apron, which he always wears. His
Like a
expression
butcher.
is sinister and seems to be full of terror for the women who describe it.
I think
This is
even
what a Masonic
doctors wore
apron looks
leather
like.
aprons because
It's actually a very sacred item to all Masons. I mean, once you receive your leather apron, you are now fully vested as a Master Mason. If Doyle was a Mason and he was a murderer, it's possible he may have incorporated some of the symbolism in Freemasonry into some aspects of his killings. It's also possible that if he wore his apron during the killings, as the term leather apron may suggest, there could be blood of the victims on it.
Oh, we're doing the
DNA
blood
could be
thing
the
again.
clearest evidence yet, proving a connection between Arthur Conan Doyle and the Ripper.
Because little known fact, Scott Walter is also a DNA specialist.
Today, Doyle's apron is part of a collection in a Chicago.
I'm also wondering if all these leather aprons are not just excuses to have crotch shots of all of these actors, because we're getting a lot of that.
Museum, along with other things that will help me learn more about Arthur Conan Doyle
Sinister
himself.
leather apron.
And that's where I'm going next.
Oh crap, I forgot where we're going. Where are we going? Going to Chicago, to the Newberry
Dan's
Library.
joining me as he's eager to see if I can help him find evidence for his theory, especially after seeing a recent headline making claims to have identified the Ripper as someone other than Arthur Conan Doyle.
Oh, gee.
Before we go in, I have something to show you.
Sure, no problem at all.
There's an article here about an Aaron Kosminski who they've identified as the Ripper based on a shawl that was found at the crime scene, and DNA of semen ties it to him. Have you heard about this?
That means
It's
nothing.
absolute nonsense. First of all, as you know, none of the Ripper's victims were sexually assaulted. There should be no semen left behind at the crime scene. Not only that, Sotheby's dates that shawl from being manufactured after 1900. The murders took place in 1888.
And I'll tell you what we do have. We potentially have DNA on a Masonic apron in this building. I say we go check it out.
I say you're right.
So wait, one guy can't be the guy because the DNA's too
Before we
old,
even
but
get to
we're going to
the
go
apron,
prove
which I've been
Doyle by
granted
using
access
DNA
to
on his
test for
apron.
blood using brand new, non-invasive technology, I can't help but admire some of the other things in the Doyle collection. What we're looking at here are 2 copies of the first edition of the Sherlock Holmes novel written by Doyle. This was first published in 1888, the same year as the Ripper killings. There's a famous line that he wrote in this book. There's a scarlet thread of murder running through the colorless skin of life, and it is our job, indeed our duty, to uncover it or to expose it.
Who schooled this man in his Doyle quotes? Like, he looks way too pleased with himself to be reciting this line. Also, just because a guy who wrote stories about murderers made a quote about murderers in the first compilation of his short stories about a guy who solves murders doesn't make that man a murderer.
Kind of like we're doing here in the Ripper investigation, right?
Very much.
There's one other interesting scene that Doyle writes about in this book, and that is
you guys
he
are pointing out
identifies
way
a
too much
Freemason
logical shit
by
here.
the compass and square on his ring, which I also have right here.
Yes.
Well, as cool as all these
Everybody
things
knows
are,
what the Mason symbol
this
looks like.
is what we came to see. This is Doyle's Masonic apron, and it's definitely a Master Mason's apron. It's got leather, of course, and I have to say something jumps out at me right away. Look at these stains right here.
Yeah, even down here there's a stain.
Right there too. And I have to say my first thought is it could be blood.
Possibility.
How do you feel looking at his apron?
You know, I look at this and I say, here's a man, I know he worked hard to get this. And once he received it, he basically resigned from the lodge and didn't show up for the meetings.
If he was the Ripper, in his mind, he was done. So he checked out of masonry and checked into murder.
I love how you know how this man thinks. Because
Lee, this is Dan.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right. Well, Lee, I have worked with XRF guns before. I mainly
did not know that the XRF gun could do DNA.
Looked at metallic objects and metallic alloys, but if these spots indeed are blood, will this pick it up?
Yeah, primarily it'll see the iron from the hemoglobin that's in the blood.
This prototype XRF gun picks up more detailed signatures of metals than any other on the market.
So
but Lee,
it's going to pick up the hemoglobin.
If you washed it, a lot of it could have been removed. That's a possibility. But I can see a stain there. So it obviously wasn't.
Damn girl brain. I'm going to get held for that.
All right, here we go.
I got to see an XRF gun. They're really cool. This is the first time I've ever seen it applied to DNA. It's not really being applied to DNA. It's being applied to determine if that's blood or not, which is going to tell you nothing. bet it's ketchup. Hot sauce.
All right, what do we got?
Let's see. So what I see first and foremost, we've got the very strong sulfur signal. Got a little bit of zinc coming up.
Zinc.
ZN, zinc, yeah.
Probably because the
unfortunately,
leather's white.
No blood. If we had blood, we should see an iron.
Should see a little bit more iron, yes.
Okay.
Not finding blood on the apron doesn't really change my mindset about Doyle being Jack the Ripper. It just means that
Not finding evidence for the thing that I said that I needed the evidence to prove doesn't mean that it's not true.
he wasn't kind of carrying this apron with him when he committed the crimes.
Clearly, there's a connection between the Ripper murders and Freemasonry. If you're right,
Clearly.
that Arthur Conan Doyle was Jack the Ripper, then he clearly got away with murder. The lack of any victim's DNA on Doyle's Masonic apron isn't a dead end. As his character Sherlock Holmes once said, it is a capital mistake to theorize in advance of the facts. And right now, I need to find more of them to support the Freedmen's
You know, I think
theory
this is the
in
first
city
time
Doyle once
I've
called
ever
home.
heard Conan Doyle brought up where they didn't bring up the fairy thing. We're back in London.
I'm meeting a fellow Freemason here in London who says he has a potential clue to the case steps away from Doyle's front door.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually lived in this street for a while.
Hey, it's David
So here is
Harrison.
where he wrote a lot of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, right?
Yeah, and he lived here in
Clearly,
1891.
the fairies were the
for about
murderers.
a
That's
year
why there's
or
no
so.
blood.
He practiced medicine and didn't work out, so he went on to bigger and better things in the literary world.
Well, I see a sign that says Sherlock Muse. Is that what I'm looking for?
Sherlock Muse. Well, Baker Street is just down there. You've probably heard of 221B.
221B Baker Street is Sherlock Holmes' fictional home, where he would have met with his partner,
It also
Dr.
didn't
Watson,
exist.
a character Doyle created based on a brother from his Freemasonic lodge. And there's something incredible on the intersection with Baker Street. I'm ready. Where is it?
Straight down there.
Well, that's a cross
Oh no, it's his hooked
carved
X.
into the curbstone. I'm going to take a look at this.
Hooked X. Hooked X. I'm
I
calling
have a
it.
handy flashlight here. It's quite weathered.
It's hooked X. Oh, here we go. Here's
Kinda
the
looks
geology.
like a Jerusalem cross.
Jerusalem Cross, yeah, that's right, yeah. There's plenty of these listed around this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think of the significance?
Well, they're called the London curbstones, and no one really knows the purpose. It's a bit of a mystery.
This has got to be probably at least a century old. My first thought is that the people that put these in probably were stonemasons.
Yeah.
Maybe
How
they
did we
used
get a
the
century old
ancient
just by
tradition
looking
of
at it?
stonemasons, where they
It's
would
on an
mark their
active London
stones.
street.
As a Freemason, I often get the question, are stonemasons and Freemasons the same thing? The answer is no, but there is a link. Stonemasons are laborers who craft things from rough stone and often mark their work with distinct symbols. Freemasons are just a social brotherhood, but they
Just a
use some of the
social
same symbols the stonemasons use to represent principles and ideals. Right there.
Yeah.
That's two right there.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your cluster going.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, look at this. 2 X's? And they have dots right here, right?
Yeah.
Wow. In Freemasonry, the X stands for transformation, but it's the B symbols carved into one of the curves I'm interested in. Over time, a B has been used to symbolize many things. The number 5, or V for victory, as in Winston Churchill's famous World War II campaign. But for certain esoteric Freemasons, it is an ancient symbol that stands for the reverence of women. A set of double V shapes appear on the curbstones and on the face of Ripper victim Catherine Eddowes.
Well, that
As a
solves it.
Freemason, Doyle would have had knowledge of all these symbols.
This is kind of
and more.
boring, I'm not going to lie.
So what do you think this all means, these carvings?
Well, it could be a number of things, but there is one place that I'd like to take you now.
Okay,
That might reveal the answer.
all right.
Let's go. Right here. There's one right there, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Got the Jerusalem Plus.
There's another one right there. That's two here.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy.
Well, this is almost like a breadcrumb trail, and I can't believe where it leads. Straight to Freemasonic headquarters.
Oh, the Masonic symbols lead to the Masonic
these
Lodge?
Symbols led us to the United Grand Lodge of England?
It's not really doing a very good job of connecting Doyle to anything, really. Or the Freemasons, really. He honestly had more evidence for the underground meeting place of the Order of the Golden Eagle from last episode than he has for anything this episode.
When I look up from the mysterious curb carvings, I realize I'm staring at a place Arthur Conan Doyle likely would have known well. The oldest Masonic Grand Lodge in the world.
Dun, dun, dun.
These symbols led us right here to the Grand Lodge. Imagine that.
Right to the front door.
Amazing coincidence, but maybe not a coincidence.
Yeah, well, fascinating, really.
These carvings, you know, when I look at them, maybe a little over a century.
Yeah, late 19th century, early 20th century, something like that.
If we do go back that far, this is about the time of Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, wow. That
I
ties it
asked
all
the
together
Grand
nicely.
Lodge what its position is on the curbstones and Doyle, and they would only give me their response in writing. They're sticking to the stonemason versus the Freemason theory for who carved the stones. But what intrigues me more is this statement. There is very little documentary evidence relating to Conan Doyle, despite there being careful record keeping by his lodge. To me, I think there is no question he was not an active Mason or was in poor standing. And the fact that he became a Freemason
surprised
the
they
year
haven't pulled
before
it
the
yet.
Ripper killings and fell off the radar the year after seems suspicious. There are people who
I'm actually kind of suspicious of his claim of being a Freemason, but
believe that the Freemasons were involved in the Jack the Ripper killings. I mean, do you think that's a possibility? A rogue guy, perhaps?
A rogue guy, a rogue loner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
rogue
Sort of
loner,
evidence at the end of the day.
Freemason murderer doctor.
One piece of key evidence to
He is
consider
rather
is
dapper,
whether
though, the guy
Freemason
they've got
Arthur
playing
Conan
him.
Doyle looked anything like the Ripper suspect who walked these streets. One eyewitness account of the Ripper appeared in a London newspaper showing a man with a knife escaping into the Tower subway, which runs under the Thames but closed when the Tower Bridge opened up. I promised Dan Friedman I would update him on my investigation, but I want to ask him more about the physical description of the suspect.
It's an eyewitness account.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good, Scott.
I want to ask you about something. The suspect
little
was
hotel
described
room.
as having dark hair, a mustache, a dark suit, and about 30 years old.
Dark hair, a mustache in 1880s, 30-ish years old, peacoat. It could have been anyone. It could have been a woman.
How does this match with Doyle at that time?
He was 29, sporting a mustache, and he always wore a suit.
And he
That's
always
very
wore a
interesting.
suit
1
in the
second.
Victorian times.
Right
Nobody
now,
in the
I'm giving you a
Victorian era
side-by-side
wore
comparison
suits.
of a composite sketch of the Ripper based on some of those eyewitness accounts and Doyle that are around the same time. I'm sending it to your email now, actually.
This is unnecessary.
Let's see what this guy looks like.
I like how this guy has made a composite image
Spot-on match. Dan,
and then
that's-
compared it to
That's
Doyle.
amazing.
And
that's
somehow
really
it
close.
matches.
The composite sketch of Jack the Ripper was created a decade ago based on eyewitness accounts. Seeing its striking similarity to an image of Arthur Conan Doyle builds the case that the famous writer was the killer.
Oh,
So
wow.
where are you
There
headed
go.
to now?
No one else
Tomorrow,
looked like Conan Doyle
I've been
back
able to
then.
get special access at the archives in London to look at letters written by the Ripper.
What I'd like to do is take in the Victorian era. What was he thinking? Scandalous.
Match some
Clearly,
of
he should have
Doyle's
been
known
wearing a kilt and a
handwriting.
toga.
He was a prolific writer. I can take those examples and hopefully see if I can find a connection between Doyle and the Ripper.
This was not the episode to do this with because there's no archaeology here. There's no geology here.
I've got a sample of Conan Doyle's handwriting, and I'm meeting up with Ripper historian Lindsay Sibiter. My goal is to see if Doyle's writing is a match to the handwriting of the Jack the Ripper letters. If it is a match, then it's possible that Doyle wrote them and was the Ripper.
This is the National Archives. They have 11...
It's not that hard to get a copy of Conan Doyle's handwriting. He hand wrote most things, like everyone then did. I mean, I don't know. He's acting like it's a big deal. It's not.
Documents.
Wow.
And they have the original Metropolitan Police files.
I wonder if they charge people to look at these, because they probably make really good money if they do.
I think this is the one. It should be in this row.
You're literally watching them look for things. For a thing that was right there.
Well, this is awesome that we were given special access to these letters. And is this really the first letter from Jack the Ripper?
Yes, well, this is the very famous Dear Boss letter.
The letter was written 17 days after the second killing and gets its name because it was addressed to the boss at London's Central News Agency. Seeing it up close and in person is disturbing, but exciting at the same time.
It's the very first letter, first document really, that you will see the words Jack the Ripper on.
This woman is way too excited about this.
Dear boss, I keep hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. That joke about Leather Apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and shan't quit ripping till I do get buckled. That must mean caught. My knife's so nice and sharp. I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. Yours truly, Jack the Ripper. And then there's a P.S. And the last thing he says is, they say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. I mean, Doyle was a doctor, right? And so maybe there could be a connection here.
Doctors actually commented that the murderer must have had some anatomical knowledge. So the press then started printing stories saying he might have been a doctor.
Let me show you something. I actually brought an example of Doyle's handwriting. So let's just take a...
Who else would have knowledge of anatomy? I mean, again, not to build my own theory here, but a butcher? I'm just saying, leather apron, butcher, knives, butcher, cutting people up, butcher. I'm just saying, like, anyway.
Look here. Here you can see Doyle's writing.
I'm sure we're going to match Doyle's writing to Jack the Ripper's because we're
As
building
I
this
look
case.
at these two, they're similar, but I don't know if they're the same. At first glance, there's actually some surprising similarities between the handwriting of this first Jack the Ripper letter and the writing of Arthur Conan Doyle.
I guess if you say so.
Especially the letters L, A, and E. But closer inspection shows big differences. The Ripper writing is at much more of an angle, and the letters like T and H don't match. They look different, don't they? Yeah. On the other hand, he was a very intelligent guy. Certainly he would have done something
the reason they don't
to alter the writing, because that's the first thing the police are going to look at, right?
Doyle altered the handwriting.
So that doesn't necessarily exclude him.
It's an intriguing theory. He clearly was fascinated with the case.
I am impressed that at every turn, every time the evidence is negative, they immediately go, it's negative, but that's because it's supposed to be negative. That doesn't mean it's not him because Doyle's so damn smart.
So what do you think about this letter?
I don't think the murderer wrote it. I personally think that it's the sort of invention of an enterprising journalist. Jack the Ripper.
It's not even a real letter.
The Whitechapel murders created a media sensation. so there was incentive to keep the story alive. It's why some people think the Dear Boss letter, which gave Jack the Ripper his name, might just be the creation of an overeager reporter. But another letter attributed to the Ripper may very well be real. It's known as the From Hell letter, though its handwriting is completely different and unlike Doyle's. It's the gruesome items sent with the letter that leads experts to think it's the real deal. From Hell. Catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk. Send you a kidney?
And with it in the post came half a human kidney.
Only half. What was he doing with the other half of it? He's like, no, I can only spare half the kidney. I'm using the other half for dinner. There you go, it's Hannibal Lecter. Case solved. Man, if negative evidence is all I need to prove my theories, I am solid, man. Everything I ever thought was real is real.
Well, half a human kidney came in a box with this letter sent to this guy. This is Mr. George Lusk, and he was head of the Whitechapel Vigilance Committee, a group of local men patrolling the streets trying to help the police. And with it in the post actually came half a human kidney.
Really? Wow. So this victim they think the kidney is connected to, who is this person?
Her name was Catherine Eddowes. She was heavily mutilated in Mitre Square.
In addition to the crime scene photos, artists would do sketches of crime victims. And there's a particularly graphic one of Catherine Eddowes.
He slit her throat from left to right.
That was particularly
stabbed her in the vagina, ripped up to the breastbone. Took out various organs, including her intestines, placed them over her shoulder. He then cut the tip of her nose off. He cut her ear off. And he also took away with him kidney and her uterus.
Oh, that's brutal. I mean, that's about as brutal as it gets.
It's just crazy how he does it in literally a few minutes.
So a few minutes, the timing, that's interesting.
Way too excited about this.
To be able to do that much damage to a body, you had to know what you're doing. The only thing I can conclude is that the person that committed these murders had to have been a physician, and I'm going to see if I can prove it.
Because that's how you start off with any good theory. You decide what your answer is going to be, and then you go prove it.
The fourth Ripper victim, Catherine Eddowes, was murdered and mutilated in under 9 minutes. That's the time between when Eddowes was last seen alive and when her cut-up body was found. My theory is that it took the skills of a doctor, like Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle, to slice up a body and extract the organs in the same ritualistic fashion as the Ripper did. And to prove it, I'm going to see exactly what it would take to do what he did.
Oh, we're going to go play with fake bodies again.
This is a dummy, right?
Yeah, so the cadaver is silicon. It's what we use to train healthcare professionals, so it's not real. But all of the internal organs, they are laid out anatomically in the anatomical position, so they're exactly where you'd find them, inside your chest and inside your abdomen.
The uterus was also cut out. Now, this is a male body.
The specimen doesn't have the female body parts like the uterus.
What I'm going to try to do is replicate what the Ripper did. I'm going to try and do it in under 9 minutes, like the Ripper did. But he would have had more to contend with.
With a fresh deceased person, in removing the organs, you'd have had a lot of blood. I mean, I'm talking 4 or 5 litres of blood that would have spilled into the cavity, and you would have impeded your vision as well. So.
And plus, he has to subdue the victim. I mean, he has to get that person still before he can do his work.
Yeah.
One of the kidneys was taken out.
He gets really
and I don't
giddy
even know where that is, but I will find it
violence.
and try to get it out. I'm a geologist. I'm not a biologist. Certainly not a doctor. I did pretty good in biology class. I got the pig dissection done. I think I did well. But this is a whole different thing. So I guess I'll give it my best shot.
I'd absolutely recommend rolling up your sleeves because it's going to get quite messy.
Oh, okay. The Ripper did the work in the dark, so I have to do it in the dark. I'm only going to dim the lights to make my best attempt at removing the organs with the same precision. I don't feel like I'm going to get a lot of help from you.
Jack the Ripper didn't have any help.
Good point. Let's get the lights.
This is stupid.
Set.
Set.
Go.
What? So we're watching him disembowel a fake corpse in under 9 minutes because that proves something. Chloroform and ether.
Cut the throat. I'm cutting the nose and down to the lower jaw. Then there was another cut here.
He's really slow at this.
This might be the craziest thing I've ever done to get to the truth in an investigation. Proving
really
that it took surgical skill that I don't have to eviscerate a body like Jack the Ripper.
What is he doing? Okay, so he's not even actually really cutting the corpse. He's like faking it. And he's like,
okay.
I was like, dude.
Well, here's the heart. I think that's the liver.
This is.
Stomach is right
I hate
here.
To be mean, but this is just stupid. It's like amusingly stupid.
Got the right stuff or not.
Are you even actually
so this part
there
of the
yet,
intestines went over the shoulder. So now where's the kidney? Is that the kidney right there?
It's me killing pseudo-archaeology. I think that's the liver. Yeah.
I hope that's the right thing.
You left everything else. You're supposed to take the intestines and put it over your shoulder.
All right.
God, Scott. Okay. If you're going to mutilate a body, do it properly.
Is that it?
There's your kidney.
Okay. Time.
So, lights on. 4 minutes 46.
I mimicked a Ripper-like evisceration in just under 5 minutes.
You didn't.
Roughly half the time it took the Ripper. But I'm convinced it would have taken me double that
Pantomime
if I'd had the same conditions.
Stupidity.
Well, that's pretty good, but let's be fair. There are some variables here that I'm not dealing with that had to be in play that night. For one thing, it was pitch black when the Ripper did his work. I'm not dealing with the chest cavity and bones. And as far as the uterus goes, this is not female body part, so I kind of had to pretend. So that probably would have taken longer.
Yeah.
And let me just ask your opinion. Do you think, was it somebody that knew what they were doing?
I just had to
If you wanted to remove the intestine and the kidney, and that was your intention.
He's very upset that was not a female corpse that he got to do that.
I don't think I've disproven my theory. I think, if anything, I've supported the theory that the person that did the Ripper killings did have medical training.
I don't know why. Oh my God, is this over with yet?
Having medical training checks one box for Dr. Arthur Conan Doyle being Jack the Ripper. Another is that Conan Doyle was a Freemason.
I wonder how many Freemasons were doctors.
The Masonic connections in the Ripper
and
murders.
Vice versa. Who were also somewhere in their early 30s.
Yet the murders were perpetrated by a Mason is the Golston Street graffiti, a message found scrawled on the wall near the site of Catherine Eddowes' killing. A top researcher in hidden symbolism is going to show me exactly where it was found.
Dun, dun, dun.
Even though people have suspected it has a Freemasonic connection, getting someone on the inside to confirm it has been a challenge. But maybe that someone is me. So Mitre Street. Mitre is a Masonic word. Many lodges have Mitre incorporated into their name. Do you think maybe the Ripper picked this place?
What's that?
And Catherine Eddowes just happened to be walking at the wrong place at the wrong time?
Well, if he didn't, it sure is coincidental. Arthur Conan Doyle was a
Mason,
this guy
gets so around as being an authority.
Catherine Eddowes was murdered right over here in the early hours of September 30th, 1888. The police reports say the only way he could have gotten out, the most likely way, is to go around the corner here. Let's check it out. Okay, this way? Yeah.
Go around the corner. So you don't actually know where it was written, you're guessing.
The murder of Catherine, it was discovered that there was this really peculiar graffiti written in chalk. I need to show you because it's very strange.
The Jews are men that will not be blamed for nothing.
Now, not only is it peculiar in English, but Jews is spelt J-U-W-E-S. And there's no record ever of the word Jew being spelt that way then or at any time.
Well, Andrew, that is an unusual spelling, but I recognize it. That is the way you spell the collective of the three ruffians in the Master Mason degree who kill Hiram Abiff. Jubilah, Jubilo, Jubilam. Hiram Abiff is an important figure for all initiates of Freemasonry. An allegorical story says that Hiram Abiff was murdered when he refused to give up secret Masonic passwords. Abiff's killers were said to be three men named Jubilah, Jubilo, and Jubilam. The three killers' names all start with the letters J and U, and the men have sometimes been called the Jews. For me, this is elementary. I can confirm this is a Freemasonic reference, without a doubt. How do we know that Ripper's attached to this?
Well, if this isn't strange enough, on the very site where this was written, they found a piece of the apron of Catherine Eddowes, who had just been murdered moments earlier. Whoever killed her came this way.
Well, if it hadn't been seen before, they found this piece of bloody apron, and that word was written or chalked onto the wall. That certainly could be a Masonic connection. And you're doing nothing to dispel Arthur Conan Doyle being the suspect.
Or the murderer could have run through that alley and dropped the apron there, and some other bird wrote that
As Sherlock Holmes, thank God it's over. Or should I say, Doyle said, when you have eliminated the impossible,
you haven't eliminated anything.
However improbable, must be the truth. And that's what I think I found here.
Except your own evidence.
Gene Friedman's belief that Jack the Ripper was Arthur Conan Doyle isn't far-fetched at all, and that there is plenty of evidence to suggest a Freemason, who also had medical training, was the killer. Perhaps he left the clues we found on purpose, so that one day a good detective would finally crack the case. If you have a mysterious artifact or site I need to see, I want to know about.
Okay, well, I did the thing. This wasn't that painful, so I might try it again. Next trick is figuring out if I can save the video somehow. He did. He found absolutely nothing. He made connections where I don't even understand. This whole Freemason thing is just... Statistically, he probably was a Freemason, because statistically he probably belonged to the upper echelon. So, like, okay. Also, the medical profession wasn't exactly regulated back then, so anybody really could have been cutting up a body and learning anatomy. It's just like there are so many factors in this, which is why you can't solve the Jack the Ripper case. Like, it's never going to be solved, because there's no evidence, unfortunately, to use to decipher who Jack the Ripper was. You can only ever speculate. And this weird reasoning for connecting Doyle, like, where did that even come from? So, yeah, he, of course, has proved nothing. And all of the evidence that he was hoping to get to try to prove anything, he negated on his own show. And then literally said, well, just because we didn't find the evidence we said we needed to find on the thing that we said we needed to find it on, doesn't mean we're wrong. And it's like, yeah, that actually is exactly what that means. Anyway, all in all, the episode was really kind of boring. Personally, I thought it was boring. I don't know. Maybe other people think it's interesting. It had nothing to do with geology. It had nothing to do with archaeology. It had nothing to do with American history, so I have no freaking clue why they even went there with this. And yeah, so I don't know. I mean, there's 45 minutes of my life. And yeah, so anyway, this has been fun. I was watching the chat. I know I didn't respond to everybody immediately, but I do agree with almost everything that everyone said. I haven't read everything, so. But yes, it's always fun. I'm glad you all enjoyed my reactions, and Hunt the DM. Yeah. The DNA on the apron thing, like, what the fuck? Seriously. There, see, I swore for you. And yeah, this is clearly a filler episode or one of those. He has one of these every season, though. He's got one of these weird, and they're almost always a Masonic thing, and it's always like some weird Masonic murder thing. Like, I want to say it was the second or third season he did like the murder of Meriwether, Meriwether Lewis, yeah, of Lewis and Clark. Apparently, there's some controversy over his death. It was apparently murder-esque, and it was because he found a thing that he wasn't supposed to find, and so some reason the Masons killed him for it. I don't know. I have to go back and rewatch the episode. I mean, it makes really great fantasy television. It makes really good like fiction. It's if you step back and you look at it from the angle of I'm writing a book, I'm speculating. It can be interesting. I'm just kind of over Ripper stuff, which I think is why this is boring for me. I'm just not like, I don't care. I really don't care. So maybe that's why like the Jack the Ripper thing was so boring to me, and like the Meriwether Lewis thing. I'd never heard that before. But anyway, every episode he's got some kind of Masonic thing that he does about murder mystery or something. It's every season, so I'm guessing this is the season's obligatory Mason murder mystery episode. So I don't know, it's just part of his pattern. I have never heard of Doyle being offered up as the Ripper before. I know that Ken Fader watched this episode yesterday, and he tweeted out some of his comments. And on top of everything else, Ken is also a Doyle aficionado. Like he's a Sherlockian. So seeing his comments, or he didn't tweet a lot, but the comments that he made were very poignant and funny. And yeah, it's just kind of like, Doyle gets blamed for a lot of stuff, and I really don't know why. Like, apparently he's also responsible for burying stuff on Oak Island, and now he's the Ripper, and like, I guess my guess is he cloned himself, and is really, this is my theory, that he's really the Doctor, and, you know, he just has a time machine and he cloned himself, and, you know, that's how he was able to do all of these things across all of these spans of time. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. And yeah, I feel like this really was just a push for the book. I don't know, if it comes up for free on Amazon, I might read it. I don't think I'd actually pay money to read it. Yeah, and there's also like this, Doyle needed hobbies. There's also this like theory, this is a Jack the Ripper theory, that the reason why the murder stopped in England was because he came over to the US. We didn't even address that. I mean, some of the more obvious things that would have made more sense, they didn't even touch on. And like I said, also, this is one of the few episodes about Conan Doyle I've ever seen where they don't bring up the freaking fairies. So that's kind of nice, I guess. I'm tired of the fairy thing too. I don't know, but still, if you write that story, Cheryl, I will read it. I will read your Doyle or Jack the Ripper story. I think there is an actual Sherlock Holmes versus Jack the Ripper. I think that's been done a few times, so it's out there. But anyway, so thank you for spending your lunch hour with me. I'm going to go actually eat lunch now, and yeah, we'll see about doing this again next week. Maybe we'll do it on Tuesday instead of Wednesday, and that way Jeb and Ken won't ruin the episode for me. Anyway, see you guys then, and thanks for stopping by for the first one. Now, how do I stop this? Oh, end stream. There we go. Bye.